Our next project is the Bangle bracelet. It requires a minimum of 4 wires to do this bracelet. This is the 4-wire bracelet. And in this one I've done 7 wires, and I've mixed gold and silver here. I'll do 5 wires on the sample project, and I will put silver wire in it just to give it contrast. The mixture of silver and gold is a nice look. The first step in this is to take the square soft wire, 21 gauge soft wire, and we're going to twist the entire length. And to do that, I put the pen vise on one end, tighten the jaws very tightly, and make sure the wire's in the middle. On the other end, I grasp it with my flat nose pliers clear at the back of the jaw so I can get quite a bit of pressure on it. Now this will work hard in the wire. It'll be much stiffer after we get through. So what I do is, in my left hand, I lay the pen vise on my leg, and I hold the other end elevated a little bit off my leg, and I'm going to move both these forward at the same time, like in a motion like that. So put the pen vise down, and I just roll it against my levis, or against my leg, and I roll it until it looks uniform with a fairly tight twist. I don't count twists. Again, I just look at the wire, and when I get it about like I want it, I stop, and that's not too bad. Then I will cut my half-hard wire in 2 pieces. Observe that I don't cut the soft wire that I just twisted. And a quick way of doing that is just grab it here in the middle. It'll be close enough. And cut it in the middle. And I want to straighten this as much as I can. So I'll just use my thumb against the curvature of the wire and straighten it. You'll never get it completely straight, but you can get it much straighter. That's not too bad there. I'll cut this little curl off. And I'll do the same with the other one. For this bracelet, I'm going to mix a silver wire into the middle of it, just for contrast. And I'm going to twist that wire so it's more visible. On the introductory tape, I talked about the pen vise, the fact that it needed to be hollow so you could run wire through to twist short lengths of half-hard wire. So again, it's a half-hard, and we're only going to twist a couple of inches at a time. So I run that through, and I begin to twist. Then I'm going to move this wire, continue twist, and here I do need to go in the same direction. I don't have to have consistent twist, and then I back the pliers out to the end, and I twist to take the flat spot out. Oops. That's what happens when you don't get it quite tight or don't get it in the center. Again, I'm twisting in the same direction every time. And the twists are not entirely the same. Some of them are a little tighter than others, but it'll never show on the finished bracelet. because you only see short parts of it at a time. And we just even everything out a little bit right at the end. Okay, so there we are. Okay, now we need to determine the overall length of the bracelet. And there's several ways to do it. One way that works pretty good for me is I take a piece of tape and I want to put this tape or whatever I'm using, and it helps to have help with this. I just put it flat against my skin or your skin. In your case, I don't want it tight, I don't want it loose, I just want it to just rest on the top of the skin. Easier said than done. Here we are. As you can see, it's a little loose. It's not, but there are really no gaps. It's just flush with the skin. And now I can just take scissors or anything, and I'm going to cut it right there. This is my wrist measurement. To that measurement, I want my finished bracelet to be 3/4 of an inch longer than this. So to this measurement, which in my case is 6 3/4, I add 3/4 of an inch. So I want the finished flat bracelet to be 7 1/2 inches. That's 6 3/4 plus 3/4 of an inch, or 6 1/2. So you need to write that number down. The next step is that I take my long twisted soft wire. These will be the ends of, this is the end of that wire, and it will form the loop part of my catch. The other end is going to be the tongue part. And so I want I'm going to make the loop part first. I come down on this roughly 2 to 2.5 inches, and I put the 90-degree bend in. These loops are all made the same. If you recall, on the Egyptian earrings, we made them, they were very small, but the process is the same. So then I lay my pliers in that angle, and I bring it around like that, and I reposition the top and bottom jaws, and I'll bring the wire on around like that. So now I have a loop, and the loop is the size of the back of my round nose pliers, right at the back of the pliers, because that's the biggest part of the plier. Now I take my chain nose pliers, hold it right where the two wires cross, and bend this back down. So that's what we have. And again, what I just formed was the loop end of the catch. This. Now then, I measured, I'll take my wrist measurement plus the 3/4 of an inch, and I'll come down to that point with the flat nose pliers, in other words 7.5 inches. See if I can show that a little better. I'm right at 7.5 inches with the jaw of my flat nose pliers. And I'm going to bring that back to meet the wire that we just turned over. In other words, here's the loop, there's the wire that I turned back. Now then, I want to measure 1/2 inch down from the loop, and I'm going to cut the short wire that I brought around. In other words, on my scale, it's 16/32 of an inch, or 1/2 inch. So that's what I have now. Again, this from here to here is 1/2 inch. I'm going to cut the wire that I folded to bring back to it. I'm going to cut it exactly where this one ends. And I do that by just sliding the flush cutter up till it touches that or butts against that wire and cut. Now then, as I hold my two wires together, you can see they meet very closely. They meet perfectly, actually. And as I scoot it in, it meets perfectly. I'm going to include an additional silver wire on this bracelet. Just to give it a little bit of a contrast, and again, as I say, it's kind of a nice look. Just bring it up here somewhere, and it will lay in the center. Okay, now then, I'm going to take each of the two remaining outside wires. These are the half hard gold-filled square wires, and I'm going to form a very small loop just like I did when we were making the rosettes on the Egyptian earrings, and I'm just going to bring it around till it meets itself, just like that. And again, I made this right out on the end of my round nose pliers, just like that. I did it by bending, just short bends and backing up, taking a bite, bending a little more till it came around and met itself. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other wire. Again, I'm just taking very small bites, backing up, taking a little bit more, and bringing it around, and the goal is to make these the same size, and they're fairly close. Next, I will align these wires and tape them into place. And I'll bring these two outer half hard wires right up to the loop. Just like that. And then I'll attempt to pick the whole thing up and keep it lined up. although it's not absolutely critical. We can do some adjustment on it, but makes it nice if you can keep everything all together. Again, I'm going to come down part of the way, and I'm going to tape it flat. That is, all the tape lays flat across the wire like that. And I'm going to tape it toward the bottom, or the other end. Just somewhere near the bottom. Again, tape it flat. Okay. This is what I have at this point. This is the what the bracelet's going to look like flat. Now I'm going to take about 8 inches of my half-round wrap wire, and I'll start wrapping at this catch end. And as always, I grab this half-round wrap wire with the flat side toward me. That's the inside of the wrap, with roughly 3/4 of an inch out there, and I'll offset it to my left. I line all of these wires up and hook the wrap wire around there, and I'll make the first wrap, as always, with my fingers. I leave this little bit of a tail on it. I may need to make an adjustment right at the end. So there's my first wrap. Everything is flat and in alignment. And then I'll continue my wraps. Just as always, as I bring this wrap wire over, I offset it back toward the previous wrap, grab it part way across the bundle, and mash flat. And I don't know how many wraps I'm going to need. I don't know what the total length of my wrap wire should be when I start. So I just I make sure I've got enough. I put a little extra on. The objective here is to wrap until it's below where the two ends of the soft wire butt up, and go at least 1/8 of an inch beyond that. So we know we want to make this, the length of this entire wrap, at least 5/8 of an inch long. Okay. Now look at my other end and see if I need to make any adjustments, like maybe add one more wrap, or and I think that's pretty good. So I will cut these then, as before, just about 1/3 of the way across the flat, or the width of the bracelet, because these little ends that are shorter are stronger and a little harder to bend. Now up here I've got this silver wire just beyond So I'm just going to bend it back and okay. So that's our first end. This will become the outside of the bracelet because I clip my ends on the inside. Sometimes it's really obvious, but not always. So you just need to determine at this point which is inside and which is outside. Next, I'm going to put the wraps on the other end. I'm going to retape this because I got this tape just a little bit too close to that end. And again, I'll just tape it flat. I think I will. I'm going to cut this center wire off a little bit just to get it out of the way. I'll cut it twice. I'll cut it now so that it'll fall inside the tongue and it'll be out of the way there. Then I'm going to start my next wraps 1/2 inch from the end of the tongue here. I'm going to come back here 1/2 inch and wrap again the same number of wraps back toward the center of the bracelet. And just to remind you, what I'm using to mark these wires is a Sharpie. It's available at any office supply store. It marks well on the wire, and it's easily removed with denatured alcohol or any solvent like acetone or mineral spirits or whatever. Okay, again, I'm going to cut 8 inches of wrap wire. Or somewhere in the ballpark. It's always better to have a little too much than not enough. So if you get an extra 1/2 inch, it won't hurt anything. Again, I'm offsetting it and bending it back to my left, and be sure that the flat side is on the inside by moving it in the light and observing the flash of light as you move it. If you get it on the other side, you don't get that flash. You can also easily see the flat side if you're using real strong magnifiers. All right, now I'm going to start my wrap here. Again, the first one with my finger. And I'm just adjusting that. Then I'll start using my flat nose to make the wraps. When you get a good start on this, then you can come back and you can take this other piece of tape off. It's kind of in the way as you get close to it and you're wrapping. And probably the best way on this is just to cut it right adjacent to the wire. Don't force this. Some of this tape is so strong that it will distort your wire if you work at it too hard. And I'll wrap again. There's two ways to do it. You can either count the number of wraps, so I could make an equal number of wraps, or you can measure it with a precise ruler and make sure you use either the inside or outside. And this is just over 5/8 of an inch, which is what I wanted. So I'll wrap here till I get 5/8 of an inch. Okay, so there we go. We've got an equal number of wraps on each end. Now then, I'm going to take each of these outside wires, and they are the same, opposite ends of these same wires that we made the loops on down here. So we're going to make loops like that on this end as well. So I'll start, I'm going to cut these off, a quarter of an inch or maybe even a little more. And again, with the round nose pliers, I'm going to start right at the end, and I'm going to start rolling down. I have a little more wire than I think I need to make these loops. But by having extra wire, I can adjust that. As you can see, I'm not quite down to where I want to be, so I'll cut a little wire off here. I'm making a circle, so the circle takes 3 times as much wire as if I were, as the size of the circle. And that worked out pretty good. That's just about where I want it. I do want it flat. And I'll do the same with the other side. Again, right out on the end. Just making it taking small bites. And that's not quite the same, so if I just take just a little piece off the end, I can control where these two end up. And so there they are. They're about in the same place. Maybe one's just a little bit larger than the other one, and I just want such a small adjustment there. Okay, that's about where I want them. And again, I have this piece of silver in the center, so again, I'm going to bring that over on the inside of the ring. I mean the bracelet. And I'll cut it right there. That also helps lock these wrap wires in so they won't come apart. Okay. All right. Now this is where what we have now. I'm going to go ahead and take the tape off. This is my bracelet. If you were to measure it, it would be the 7.5 inch length that we desired, most perfectly. And this is the outside of the bracelet, as determined by where we cut the wraps. Now then, we want to add these two wraps. It serves a couple of purposes. It's decorative. It also holds these wires well in alignment, and always will. If for some reason you have wires that are spreading out like this, You can adjust that somewhat by moving it to the sides and straightening it, moving it to the sides and straightening it, and they will come together. But the wrap wires that we're going to put on now will hold that forever. And we only need a couple of inches of wrap wire now. We just do about 4 or 5 wraps. As always, I start, and I'll set this to my left. Same with both wires, both wrap wires. Okay. There are 2 ways to approach this. One is to measure between the wraps and divide that by 3 and space them a third of the way. What I would normally do, and probably recommend for a better result, would be to find the center of the bracelet between the wraps, mark that, and then come 1 inch either side, start the wrap at that point, then wrap toward the center. So that's the way we'll do it. So I measured the distance between the wraps. In this case, it's 5 3/8. So half of 5 3/8 is 2 11/16. Which is it's very, very close to 2 3/4. Just one. So that's the center. Then I will measure from that center point 1 inch either way. Okay. So as I said, I will start the wrap at that point, and I'll wrap from this point toward the center, about 4 to 5 wraps. Again, we do the first one with your fingers, and we want that straight across because they're quite visible. Just looking at the wrong side. The purpose of the offset is to allow the wraps on the outside of the piece to be straight across. Again, I have this hump that I talked about before. This is just a little higher, so I'll back off a 1/4 of a turn. Again, put pressure on it, pull it down tight, and wrap it. And then this one I don't need because I have 5 wraps. Okay, there we are. And we'll do the same on the other side. Move that to our 1 inch mark. Just tweaking my other wrap here. and 5. Again, we've got the hump, so I'll take that out. And there are okay, there's our bracelet. Now then, we're going to form it into a bracelet, and there are several ways to do it. Some people use a bracelet mandrel, but frankly, it only gives you a rough shape, and you'll have to shape it by hand after you use the bracelet mandrel. I use another method, and that is I just take my ring mandrel, and you can use any thing that's roughly 1 inch in diameter, but I always have the ring mandrel with me. This is a 1 inch steel round shape. You could equally well use a piece of dowel rod, 1 inch or 1 1/4 inch in diameter, or medicine bottle, or just about anything that's round. And so I'll start here. This is, again, the inside, because that's where I cut all of my wires. And I just start at one end. And this is kind of awkward to show, I guess. And I take just small bites, just like I do when I am making a loop with the pliers. And I start right out on the end, and I just take a bite, and I want to maintain symmetry. So I work from end to end, and where I don't want so much curvature, I take bigger bites. Again, as I said, I constantly check for symmetry. Through the middle here, I don't want, the wrist's natural curvature is not as pronounced as it is underneath. Actually, this is not too bad. Now, one thing you can do is to draw ellipses or ovals on a piece of paper or a piece of cardboard, and draw perfect, and then use those to gauge your bracelet by, to make sure you've got good symmetry. Now look at this, and I don't have as much curvature through here as I do on this one, so I'm going to straighten this one out on here a little bit. And I had a little more over here than I do over here, so I'll adjust it here. Now, it turns out that all wrists are shaped a little differently, and so the ultimate test is to test it on the person that's going to wear it and shape it accordingly. If you get little straight or little humps in it like this, they're very easy to take out. You lay your flat nose pliers across those humps diagonally, kind of a steep diagonal, and just apply a little pressure, and it takes them right out. It's easier, of course, not to get those in there. And the way you do that is by taking smaller bites, and when you're making the thing round, and more bites, more frequently. Constantly checking. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and make the catch now, and you would try it on the person that was going to wear it by you just roll it over like that. You start on the edge of the wrist and just roll it on. You ladies know how to do that a lot better than I do. Okay. Start to make the tongue end of the catch by just using my round nose pliers like that. And on this end, I'm going to put the outer end like that. And on this catch end, I'm going to bend this out like that. I bend it back out. I don't know if it's too apparent on the video. And what we're trying to accomplish is to get an arrangement where you can just close it with one hand, just like that. That's pretty much what we want, and that's about where we are. There can be a little adjustment in this. Ring, and you can make a big difference by making this just a little bit longer or a little bit shorter as to how well how tight it's going to fit. And as I say, just a little bit makes a big difference in how it fits. I'm just tweaking a little bit. But anyway, that's the bracelet. I would clean this off with denatured alcohol. Again, polish it, and I think the silver adds an additional design element that's kind of nice and probably makes it so you can wear it with different kinds of outfits. You can fool around a long time adjusting it, but you shouldn't have to, really. But we do want it to be smooth. There. So the only thing left to do is deburr, polish, and clean. So that's our bracelet.